The fate of an empire hangs in the balance, not just any empire, but the Persian Empire, the greatest the world had ever seen. And on the other side, a brilliant young king driven by ambition and destiny. This is the true story of the Battle of Gaugamela. So what happened when these two titans clashed? Let's dig deeper. To understand the Battle of Gaugamela, we have to go back to the 4th century BCE. The Persian Empire, ruled by King Darius III, was a dominant force for centuries, a seemingly unshakable giant that stretched from the Mediterranean to India. Think of it as a superpower of its time, vast and wealthy. But its size also made it vulnerable. Enter Alexander the Great, the young king of Macedonia. He was no ordinary ruler. Driven by insatiable ambition and a belief in his own destiny, Alexander was determined to conquer the world. He had already made his mark, conquered several lands, and solidified his authority. He had a highly trained army, very different from the army Darius had controlled, and they were ready for war. To Darius, Alexander was a threat that needed to be stopped. He was a newcomer who had already defeated the Persian armies. To Alexander, Darius was the final obstacle on his path to legendary status. The stage was set. Two forces diametrically opposed in ideology and strategy were on a collision course. A clash between the old and the new, between an established empire and an unstoppable force. Darius' army was a spectacle, an incredible gathering of warriors from across the vast Persian Empire. They were numerous, estimated at anywhere from 100,000 to 250,000 men, potentially even more depending on the source. This included cavalry, infantry, and even scythed chariots. It was a colorful mix of different ethnicities wearing a variety of armor. But the sheer number of men made it seem intimidating. This was an army built for intimidation. But numbers are not everything. Alexander's army, though smaller, probably between 40,000 and 50,000, was a war machine, a well-oiled and perfectly functional mechanism. His soldiers were battle-hardened professionals honed by years of constant training. They were led by Alexander himself, a brilliant tactician who could inspire his men to fight for him. They were disciplined, and their equipment and training were excellent, and their main strength? The Macedonian phalanx, a dense formation of spear-wielding soldiers whose spears could be as hard as an iron wall, supported by highly mobile cavalry. The Persian army was like a huge, sprawling tree. Alexander's was more like a thunderbolt, powerful, focused, and incredibly dangerous. These weren't just armies. They were symbols of their civilizations. On one side, you had Persia, established power steeped in tradition. On the other, Macedonia's ambitious, innovative approach. The contrast was striking, and the coming battle was destined to be the stuff of legend. The battle began on the plains of Gaugamela, not far from modern Mosul, Iraq, in 331 BCE. The Persians positioned their massive army on a large open plain, hoping to envelop Alexander's smaller force. They even prepared the ground for chariots to pass through and break through the enemy lines. Darius was confident that his superior numbers would crush the Macedonians. Alexander, however, was undeterred. He understood the strengths of his army and Darius' weaknesses. He did not attack the center of the Persian army directly. Instead, he positioned his troops in a staggered line. His best troops were on the flanks and the phalanx in the center. His tactic was to create gaps in Darius' line and then exploit them. He used a feigned retreat to lure the Persian cavalry into a trap. The Macedonian cavalry engaged the Persian cavalry in a furious fight, giving the Macedonian phalanx a clear path to attack the Persian lines. The clash was cataclysmic, a terrifying array of clashing steel, screams, and the thunder of hooves. The Persian chariots charged, their whirling blades meant to cut down the Macedonian soldiers, but they were largely ineffective. The Macedonian phalanx surged forward, an impenetrable wall of spears pushing back the Persian lines. Driving back the less trained Persian infantry, Alexander himself, leading the charge, was a whirlwind of fury on horseback. In the midst of the battle, a gap appeared in the Persian line. Alexander and his cavalry charged through it, heading straight for Darius. Darius, seeing his line break, and with the Macedonian cavalry bearing down on him, lost his nerve. He abandoned his army and fled the field. Darius' flight sent panic through the ranks of the Persian army. The vast Persian army, once so confident and formidable, quickly disintegrated into chaos. The Macedonian cavalry pursued the retreating Persians, killing many. The battle ended in a decisive victory for Alexander. The scale of the defeat was staggering. The Persian army suffered tens of thousands of casualties. It was the beginning of the end of the Persian Empire. Gaugamela was more than just a battle. It was a turning point in history. Alexander's victory opened the gates for him to conquer the rest of the Persian Empire, spreading Greek culture throughout the East. It began a new era called the Hellenistic Age. The victory at Gaugamela made Alexander more than just a king. He was now seen as a conqueror, a legend. The Battle of Gaugamela demonstrated that with the right training, strategy, and leadership, a smaller army can defeat a larger force. It became a case study for military strategists. The Battle of Gaugamela raises many questions. Was Alexander's victory inevitable? Was the Persian Empire always destined to fall? What would the world be like today if the battle had gone differently? The clash of these two empires was a defining moment, a reminder of the fragility of power and the impact that individuals can have on the world.